Have you ever, like, wondered who the first person to stand on a stage
Uh-huh.
and tell jokes for a living was?
Yeah.
Like, before comedy clubs were even a thing?
Yeah.
Today, we are taking a deep dive into the life of a guy who might just be the granddaddy of stand-up comedy, Charles Farrar Browne.
He's not exactly a household name these days, but
Yeah.
back in the mid-1800s, he was a comedic superstar.
Wow.
Like, imagine a time when people are flocking to hear lectures, not just, to
Nice.
learn
Yeah.
stuff, but to laugh. That's the world. Charles Farrar Browne, a.k.a.
Oh, Artemis Ward.
Artemis Ward,
Yeah.
helped to create.
So we've got a whole stack of sources here. Biographies, old newspaper clippings, even
Yeah.
some personal letters.
Uh-huh.
And we're going to uncover how Browne went from like a small-town printer to a national sensation.
It's amazing.
And how his humor, like delivered through this outrageous character, Artemis Ward,
Right.
changed the face of American entertainment.
Well, and what's really fascinating is he wasn't just like cracking jokes.
Right.
He was actually using humor to comment on society, politics, even poking fun at the Mormons.
Okay, let's unpack this. Browne's story starts in 1834 in Waterford, Maine.
Classic New England upbringing,
Yeah.
small town, picturesque scenery.
Yeah.
You can practically hear the church bells ringing on a Sunday morning.
Uh,
But this idyllic childhood took a turn when his father died when he was just 13.
wow, losing a parent that young must have been tough.
Oh, yeah.
I bet it forced him to kind of grow up fast.
Absolutely. He had to start helping to support the family.
Yeah.
So he left school and apprenticed as a printer.
So instead of hitting the books, he was setting type.
That's right.
Huh. I wonder if those early days in the printing world kind of sparked his love for wordplay, which would later become like a hallmark of his Artemis Ward persona.
That's a really good point. We often see echoes of those early experiences in
Yeah.
people's later work. And Browne's humor was all about playing with words,
Yeah.
especially misspellings.
Right. Speaking of printing jobs, there's this hilarious story
Oh, yeah.
about Browne working at the Weekly Democrat,
Oh, yeah.
where his coworkers rigged a system to steal rum from the barrels downstairs.
Oh, wow.
They basically created a rum pipeline leading right to their desks.
Oh, that's great.
Apparently, Browne wasn't involved in that scheme,
Okay.
but it gives you a sense of the mischievous atmosphere he
Right.
was surrounded by.
Yeah, for sure. It makes you wonder if some of those colorful characters he encountered,
Yeah,
found their way into his later writing.
definitely. He had a keen eye for the absurd, finding humor in everyday situations.
Yeah.
And that brings us to his time at the Carpetbag, a humor magazine in Boston.
Uh-huh.
This is where he started experimenting with writing,
Right.
really finding his comedic voice.
Right.
But he was still working as a printer, right?
He was, yeah.
But the writing bug had bitten him.
Oh, yeah, it did. He was sneaky about it, too. He
Yeah.
submitted his first piece anonymously. Yeah. Tucked it in with the regular mail.
Oh, wow.
I know. The editor, Benjamin Schiller, he published it
Wow.
without even knowing who wrote it.
That's amazing.
You can just imagine Browne's delight
Oh,
when he
man.
saw his own words in print.
That must have been a thrill.
Yeah.
Like a secret mission accomplished.
Exactly. And this success led him to write more. Initially, he was writing under the pen name Lieutenant Chubb.
Oh, Lieutenant Chubb.
Yeah. Which was kind of a jab at his lanky physique.
Oh.
All good practice for what was to come.
Okay, and what was to come was the birth of Artemis Ward.
Yes.
Now, this wasn't some carefully planned creation.
Yes.
Right. It started as a joke, a simple letter to the Cleveland Plain Dealer.
That's right.
So picture this. A letter arrives, supposedly, from this showman named Artemis Ward,
Uh-huh.
requesting free advertising for his traveling exhibit,
Okay.
which featured moral bears,
Oh, my God.
amusing kangaroo,
Really?
and wax figures of everyone from George Washington
Wow.
to notorious criminals.
Am-
And the spelling, oh, the glorious misspellings.
Oh.
He Ward's letters were a masterpiece of phonetic butchery,
Oh, my goodness.
all delivered with a straight face and a heavy dose of Yankee common sense.
I love that.
It's like he was channeling a rural philosopher with a loose grip on grammar.
It was brilliant.
Yeah.
Browne tapped into this vein of humor that resonated with audiences.
Right.
Here was this seemingly simple character full of malapropisms and misspellings,
Right.
yet spouting opinions on everything from politics
Yes.
to everyday life.
It was satire disguised as folksy wisdom. you know?
Totally.
He was making people laugh, but also making them think
Right.
without being preachy or condescending.
Exactly. And this brings up an important point
Yeah.
about Browne's humor.
Okay.
While it was incredibly popular, in his time,
Right.
we have to acknowledge that some of it,
Mm-hmm.
particularly his portrayals of women and minorities,
Yeah.
wouldn't fly today.
Right. Good point.
I
It's
would-
always tricky navigating humor from a different era.
Yes.
What might have been considered a harmless joke back then
Yeah.
can land very differently today.
Exactly.
Okay.
It's a reminder that humor is often a reflection
Yeah.
of, the social norms of its time.
Of course.
Yeah.
But even considering that, what's remarkable
Yeah.
is how Browne managed to create this enduring character
Yeah.
that resonated with audiences on such a large scale.
People were clamoring for more Artemis Ward.
Wow.
His letters in The Plain Dealer were a huge hit.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this unexpected success led Browne to make a bold move,
Okay.
taking Artemis Ward from the printed page to the stage.
Wow. So Browne decides to step onto a stage and bring this Artemis Ward character to life.
That's right.
But this wasn't like a play or vaudeville act.
Yeah.
He was doing something totally new.
Right.
Yeah.
Think about it. Back then, lectures were considered highbrow entertainment. People went to be informed, not necessarily to laugh.
Right.
Browne turned that on its head.
Wow.
He was delivering humorous lectures completely in character as Artemis Ward, and audiences ate it up.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
It's like he invented stand-up comedy.
Okay.
He was a one-man show
Yeah.
riffing on current events,
Yeah.
telling outrageous stories,
Yeah.
and all with that deadpan delivery that never broke character.
It's true. Imagine sitting in the audience not knowing if you should be taking notes or
Wow.
busting a gut laughing.
Wow.
That was Browne's genius, blurring the lines between education and entertainment.
And get this, he'd often give his lectures these grand, misleading titles.
Really?
Like he'd call a talk Babes in the Woods, and then proceed to talk about something completely different.
Wow.
Like the latest political scandal.
Oh, that's great.
It was all part of the act,
Right.
the persona.
Uh-huh.
And it worked. Browne was a hit.
Hmm.
Even Mark Twain,
Oh, wow.
who, became a literary giant,
Yep.
was a huge admirer of Browne's comedic style.
That's pretty cool.
Twain once said that Browne's success depended even more on the manner than on the matter.
Oh, yeah.
He was recognizing that Browne understood how to work a crowd. Right.
How to use timing and delivery to maximize the laughs.
It's like the difference between reading a joke and hearing a comedian tell it.
Yeah.
The delivery, the timing, the persona,
Right?
it all comes together to create the comedic effect.
And the success wasn't limited to the stage.
Ah.
Browne's first book, Artemis Ward, his book, was a publishing sensation.
Get out.
It sold over 40,000 copies,
Wow.
which back then was a massive bestseller.
You
It even caught the attention of President Lincoln.
really?
Apparently, Lincoln was so fond of Browne's writing
Wow.
that he shared a story from the book with his cabinet.
No way. Yeah. So the President of the United States was a fan of Artemis Ward.
Yeah.
That says something about how
Yeah.
Browne's humor was able to kind of transcend social classes,
Yeah.
reaching everyday folks.
Right.
And even the most powerful man in the country.
And remember, this was a time when humor was often used as a tool for political commentary.
Oh, for sure.
Newspapers were full of satirical cartoons and witty essays.
Right. So Lincoln enjoying Browne's work kind of fits right into that tradition.
It does. It also makes me think about the role humor played
Uh-huh.
in helping people cope with the stresses of the time.
Right.
The Civil War was raging.
Oh, yeah.
There were all sorts of social and political upheavals.
Right.
Maybe laughter offered a much-needed escape.
That's a good point. Humor can be a powerful coping mechanism,
Oh, absolutely.
a way to find light in the darkness.
Yeah.
Now, speaking of coping, Browne's success allowed him to finally provide for his family.
Right.
Remember, he started working at such a young age
Yeah.
to help his mother after his father's death.
Yeah.
Now he could pay off her debts
Good for
and
him.
ensure her financial security.
It's a heartwarming aspect of his story,
Yeah.
often overshadowed by his comedic persona.
Right.
He was a loyal son,
Yeah.
deeply committed to his family.
It adds another layer to this already fascinating character.
It does.
And speaking of fascinating relationships, let's talk about Browne's friendship with Mark Twain.
Oh, yeah. A true meeting of comedic minds.
Right. A partnership that shaped both of their careers.
Absolutely. They met on tour in Nevada,
Wow.
and Browne immediately recognized Twain's talent.
Really?
Yeah. He encouraged him to write the story that would launch Twain's career,
Wow.
the celebrated jumping frog of Calaveras County.
It's amazing to think that Browne played such a pivotal role in Twain's success.
I know, right?
He didn't just offer encouragement.
Right.
He actively helped Twain get that story published,
Yeah.
connecting him with the right people.
Yeah.
It speaks volumes about his generosity and his belief in Twain's abilities.
It highlights the importance of mentorship,
Yeah.
recognizing and nurturing talent in others.
And the similarities in their comedic styles are undeniable.
Oh, yeah. They both loved the absurd,
Yeah.
the unexpected, using humor to poke fun at social conventions.
Now, Browne wasn't content with just books and lectures. He was always looking for new ways to push the boundaries of comedy,
Oh, yeah.
to bring Artemis Ward to life in different ways.
Right.
And this is where the panorama comes in.
Okay, the panorama was a 19th century phenomenon.
Okay.
Think of it like an early form of cinema.
Okay.
It was a giant painted canvas,
Wow.
often depicting vast landscapes or historical events,
Oh, wow.
and it would slowly unfurl
Oh.
while a narrator told the story.
It sounds pretty epic.
It was a huge form of entertainment.
Oh, wow.
And Browne, always the innovator,
Yeah.
saw an opportunity to inject his unique brand of humor into this format.
So instead of majestic landscapes, he gave audiences what?
Well, he created this satirical panorama.
Okay.
It was filled with deliberately exaggerated scenes,
Uh,
comical characters,
Yeah.
and even some, let's just say, questionable depictions of Native Americans.
oh, lie.
It was social commentary disguised as spectacle.
Oh, wow. So he was basically trolling the entire genre.
Yeah.
Turning this serious educational form of entertainment into a giant comedic parody.
Yeah.
It's like he was doing what Weird Al Yankovic does with music,
Yeah.
but a century earlier.
Exactly. Browne was always playing with expectations,
Yeah.
subverting norms, finding the humor in the unexpected.
Now, alongside these comedic ventures, Browne embarked on another adventure,
Uh-huh.
a journey through the American West, including a trip to Utah,
Wow.
right into the heart of Mormon territory.
Wow.
This experience would provide the material for his book,
Okay.
Artemis Ward Among the Mormons.
Oh, yeah.
And let's be honest,
Mhm.
his initial views of the Mormons were not exactly flattering. He played into the widespread fascination and
Yeah.
often prejudice towards this relatively new religious group.
Right.
His portrayal of Brigham Young and Mormon practices was definitely exaggerated,
Uh-huh.
using humor to highlight what he saw as the strangeness of their beliefs and customs.
Okay.
But here's where things take an interesting turn. While in Utah, Browne fell ill with typhoid fever. And who nursed him back to health?
Who?
The Mormons.
Oh, wow.
This act of kindness seems to have softened his stance.
Really?
His later writings about the Mormons,
Uh-huh.
though still laced with humor,
Okay.
lacked the biting edge of his earlier work.
That's interesting how a personal experience can really shift someone's perspective,
Yeah.
even on something as deeply ingrained as religious beliefs.
It speaks to Browne's ability to evolve,
Yeah.
to let go of rigid viewpoints
Yeah.
when confronted with a different reality.
Right.
Unfortunately, this whirlwind career,
Yeah.
the constant travel,
Uh-huh.
the late nights,
Yeah.
it all took a toll on his health.
Oh, no.
While on tour in England,
Right.
where he was wildly successful,
Wow.
Browne began experiencing exhaustion.
Oh.
Initially, it was dismissed as overwork,
Uh-huh.
but it soon became clear that something more serious was wrong.
Yeah.
Browne was diagnosed with tuberculosis,
Huh.
a devastating illness at the time.
Yeah.
So here's Browne, this comedic force of nature, struck down by this terrible illness. It's hard to imagine what that must have been like for him.
It was a cruel twist of fate,
Right.
He was only in his early 30s,
Right.
at the height of his career.
Wow.
He tried to rest.
Uh-huh.
He even spent time on the island of Jersey, hoping the sea air would help.
Right.
But he couldn't stay away from the stage for
Yeah.
the laughter from his friends.
Yeah. He missed that connection,
Yeah.
the energy of performing.
Yeah.
It must have been tough to be sidelined like that.
He tried to go back to London, but he got too weak to travel further.
Oh, wow.
And his friends, they gathered around him, offering comfort and companionship in his final days.
It's a testament to his character that so many people cared for him, that he built such strong bonds
Yeah.
despite his often chaotic lifestyle.
Absolutely. And even in his final days, his wit and generosity kind of shone through.
Yeah.
There's this touching story about him asking for pen and paper.
Oh, wow.
intending to write his autobiography.
Oh, wow.
But he only managed a few lines.
Those unfinished lines are like a window into his mind, you know?
Yeah.
It's a glimpse of the reflections he might have shared
Right.
if he had more time.
Yeah.
It's a reminder that even the funniest people have depths,
Yeah.
that there's always more to the story.
Yeah. He died on March 6th, 1867,
Wow.
just a few weeks before his 33rd birthday.
Wow. The outpouring of grief must have been immense.
It was the London literary and theatrical world mourned the loss
Right.
of a true original.
His funeral was packed with mourners,
It was.
a testament to the impact he made.
Absolutely.
And his will kind of revealed a surprising amount of thoughtfulness
Yeah.
and generosity.
Yeah. He left his book collection,
Wow.
which was a treasure he'd inherited,
Yeah.
to a deserving student in his hometown of Waterford, Maine.
But there was a catch.
Okay.
The student had to pass a rigorous exam
Oh, wow.
to prove their dedication to learning.
That's a quirky detail that reveals so much about Browne's character.
Right.
He wasn't just giving away his books. He
Yeah.
wanted to make sure they went to someone who truly valued knowledge.
Right. He also set up an apprenticeship for his young assistant,
Oh, wow.
making sure the boy had the skills,
Yeah. Right.
to make a living in the printing trade.
Right.
And he even set aside funds for his future education.
Wow.
It was a way of paying forward the kindness
Yeah.
that he had received early in his career.
It speaks to his loyalty,
Yeah,
his desire to help those who had helped him.
exactly. And then there's this incredible detail in his will,
Oh, okay.
this dream of establishing a home for worn-out printers
Oh.
in the United States.
Oh, wow. Sadly, that particular provision never came to fruition.
It didn't.
Oh.
But it shows his empathy,
Yeah.
for his fellow tradesmen.
For the struggles they often faced.
Yeah, it's a reminder that behind the laughter,
Right.
behind the outrageous persona,
Yeah.
there was a man who understood the hardships of life,
Right.
who never forgot where he came from.
Exactly. But the story doesn't end there.
Oh, right. We've got that whole post-mortem drama.
Right. The family claiming to be his abandoned wife and children.
Yeah, that was wild. So a few years after Browne's death,
Uh-huh.
this family emerges complete with lawyers, ready to claim their share of his supposed fortune.
Crazy.
They claimed they had married in 1835,
Okay.
which is odd considering his officially recorded birth date is 1834.
Right.
But they had witnesses, documents, a whole elaborate backstory.
The whole thing.
They painted this picture of Browne leading a double life,
Wow.
abandoning his wife and 9 children in Kentucky
Oh, my goodness.
to pursue fame and fortune as Artemus Ward.
That's crazy.
It's like something straight out of a dime novel.
I know, but the whole thing unraveled pretty quickly. Yeah. There were just too many inconsistencies, too many discrepancies with Browne's well-documented life.
Wow. So it turns out that Browne's estate wasn't nearly as grand as people had assumed.
Right.
He provided for his mother and his assistant,
Uh-huh.
but the rest was fairly modest.
Okay. So maybe that's why this mysterious family eventually dropped their claim.
Right.
Not enough money to be worth the trouble.
Or maybe they realized their fabrication was falling apart.
Could be.
Whatever the reason, this bizarre episode adds a final layer of absurdity to Browne's story.
Right.
It's almost too perfect, isn't it?
It is.
Even in death, he's surrounded by this comedic drama.
Right.
This case of mistaken identity and exaggerated claims.
Yeah.
It's like a final act of the Artemis Ward show.
And amidst all of this,
Right.
Mark Twain remained a steadfast defender of Browne's legacy.
Really?
Yeah. He went on a lecture tour,
Wow.
paying tribute to his friend.
That's amazing.
Cementing Browne's place in the history of American humor.
It wasn't just a eulogy.
No.
It was a celebration of Browne's genius, their shared love of laughter,
Yeah.
their deep connection as fellow artists.
Right.
It's amazing to think that this relatively unknown figure from Maine
I know.
had such a profound impact on someone like Mark Twain.
It shows how interconnected the literary world was, how influence and inspiration could kind of flow in unexpected directions.
And it speaks to the power of friendship,
Yeah.
of loyalty, of recognizing and honoring talent.
Absolutely.
So after all this digging,
Yeah.
after sifting through all these sources, what does it all mean?
Yeah.
Who was Charles Farrar Browne?
He was a comedic innovator,
Yeah.
a master of wordplay, a satirist
Mm-hmm.
who used laughter to challenge conventions and make people think. He was a complex figure,
Right.
full of contradictions, but ultimately he was a man who brought joy to millions, paving the way for generations of comedians to come.
Yeah. He reminds us that humor can be a powerful force.
Yeah.
A way to connect with others, to cope with difficult times, and to make the world a little bit brighter.
And perhaps his story inspires us to embrace our own unique voices, to find the humor in the everyday,
Right.
and to never underestimate the power of a good laugh.
So, dear listener, we leave you with this. If you could attend one of Browne's lectures as Artemis Ward, what topic would you choose and why? Let us know on social media.
Yeah.
We'd love to hear your thoughts.
Until next time, keep exploring,
Yeah?
keep questioning,
Yeah.
and keep laughing.
So here's Browne, this comedic force of nature, struck down by this terrible illness. It's hard to imagine what that must have been like for him.
It really was. He was only in his early 30s at the height of his career.
Yeah, wow.
He tried to rest. He even spent time on the island of Jersey hoping the sea air would help. But he couldn't stay away from the stage, from the laughter from his friends.
Yeah, he just missed that connection.
Yeah.
That energy of performing.
Yeah.
It must have been tough to be sidelined like that.
Well, he did try to return to London.
Right.
But he became too weak to travel any further.
Wow.
And his friends gathered around him offered comfort and companionship in his final days.
It's really a testament to his character that so many people cared for him.
It is.
That he had built such strong bonds, despite his often chaotic lifestyle.
Absolutely. And even in his final days, his wit and generosity shone through. There's this touching story about him asking for pen and paper, intending to write his autobiography.
Oh, wow.
But he only managed a few lines.
Those unfinished lines are like a window into his mind.
Yeah.
Like a glimpse of the reflections that he might have shared if he'd had more time.
Yeah.
It's a reminder that even the funniest people have depths. That there's always more to the story.
He died on March 6th, 1867, just a few weeks before his 33rd birthday. The outpouring of grief was immense. The London literary and theatrical world mourned the loss of a true original.
Wow. His funeral must have been packed.
It was. It was packed with mourners. A real testament to the impact that he'd made.
Yeah. And his will revealed a surprising amount of thoughtfulness and generosity.
It did. He bequeathed his extensive book collection, a treasure that he had inherited, to a deserving student in his hometown of Waterford, Maine. But there was a catch. The student had to pass a rigorous exam to prove their dedication to learning.
That's a quirky detail that reveals so much about Browne's character.
It does.
He wasn't just giving away his books. He wanted to make sure that they went to someone who truly valued knowledge.
Right. He also set up an apprenticeship for his young assistant.
Wow.
Making sure the boy would have the skills to make a living in the printing trade.
Right.
And he even set aside funds for the boy's future education.
Wow. That's incredible.
A way of paying forward the kindness that he had received earlier in his career.
It speaks to his loyalty, his desire to help those who had helped him.
It does. And then there's this incredible detail in his will. A dream of establishing a home for worn-out printers in the United States.
Oh, that's really touching.
Yeah.
Sadly, that particular provision never came to fruition.
No, it didn't. But it shows his empathy for his fellow tradesmen.
Yeah.
For the struggles that they often faced.
Yeah, it's a reminder that behind the laughter, behind this outrageous persona, there was a man who understood the hardships of life.
Yeah.
Who never forgot where he came from.
Exactly. But the story doesn't quite end there. Remember that post-mortem drama we mentioned?
Oh, yeah.
The family claimed to be his abandoned wife and children?
That was wild. So a few years after Browne's death, this family emerges.
Right.
Complete with lawyers.
I know.
Ready to claim their share of his supposed fortune.
That's right. They claimed that they had married in 1835.
Right. Which is odd, considering his officially recorded birth date is 1834.
I know, right? But they had witnesses, documents, a whole elaborate backstory. They painted this picture of Browne leading this double life, abandoning his wife and 9 children in Kentucky to pursue fame and fortune as Artemis Ward.
Wow. It's like something straight out of a dime novel.
It really is. But the whole thing quickly unraveled.
Oh, really?
Yeah, there were too many inconsistencies, too many discrepancies with Browne's well-documented life.
So it turns out Browne's estate wasn't nearly as grand as people assumed.
No, it wasn't. He'd provided for his mother and his assistant, but the rest was fairly modest.
So maybe that's why this mysterious family eventually dropped their claim.
Right,
It's not enough money to be worth the trouble.
right. Or maybe they realized their fabrication was falling apart.
Right. Whatever the reason, this bizarre episode adds a final layer of absurdity to Browne's story.
It really does. Almost too perfect, isn't it? Even in death, he's surrounded by this comedic drama,
Yeah.
this case of mistaken identity and exaggerated claims. It's like a final act of the Artemis Ward show.
It really is. And amidst all this, Mark Twain remained a steadfast defender of Browne's legacy.
He did. He went on a lecture tour paying tribute to his friends, cementing Browne's place in the history of American humor.
It wasn't just a eulogy.
Yeah.
It was a celebration of Browne's genius, their shared love of laughter, their deep connection as fellow artists.
Right.
It's amazing to think that this relatively unknown figure from Maine had such a profound impact on someone like Mark Twain.
I know, it's incredible. It really shows how interconnected the literary world was, how influence and inspiration could flow in such unexpected directions.
And it speaks to the power of friendship, of loyalty,
Right.
of recognizing and honoring talent.
Absolutely.
So after all of this digging, after sifting through all of these sources,
Yeah.
what does it all mean? Who was Charles Farrar Browne?
Well, he was a comedic innovator, a master of wordplay, a satirist who used laughter to challenge conventions and make people think. He was a complex figure full of contradictions, but ultimately he was a man who brought joy to millions and paved the way for generations of comedians to come.
He reminds us that humor can be a powerful force,
Mm.
It's a way to connect with others, to cope with difficult times, and to make the world just a little bit brighter.
And perhaps his story inspires us to embrace our own unique voices, to find the humor in the everyday, and to never underestimate the power of a good laugh.
So, dear listener, we leave you with this. If you could attend one of Browne's lectures as Artemis Ward, what topic would you choose and why? Let us know on social media. We'd love to hear your thoughts.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep laughing.